Greetings, coming to you guys on St. Patty's Day. Just so you know, I haven't mentioned this to the crowd yet. For Christmas, I got a one of those Ancestry Now DNA things, and my girlfriend kept telling me that I'm Irish, and I to my knowledge, was never Irish. You know, I look Irish clearly, but German and French. My last name is French. Don't hold it against me. But German and French was always my background. So with that said, I went ahead and submitted my mucus sample, spit in the cup, and came back 6 weeks later. I had 20% Irish in my background. So I am technically part Irish. So happy St. Patty's Day, everybody. I'm not sure when you're going to be seeing this. Could be 3 months from now, but happy St. Patty's Day. Hope it's going well for everybody. Today's question is a really good one. I'm going to have fun with this one. No black and white answers today, but it comes from Jackson. I am under the understanding that in Ohio you can carry in a place of worship with and only with the permission of a church. I'm going to stop right there and answer that question. That is correct with regards to concealed handgun licenses. It does state that you can carry into a place of worship if the place of worship permits. We generally, and I've done videos on this before, we generally recommend getting some sort of written permission from the church. It's not required in the law, but we generally recommend that. Maybe get it put in the bylaws, the weekly bulletin. Have them put a pro-gun sign on the door, just some evidence in case there's a fallout at the church and you're on the wrong side of who grants permission and doesn't grant permission. That's just our general suggestion as attorneys. So with that said, let's continue on with the question. I am also under the understanding that it is a serious offense to so much as take a drink of alcohol while carrying. And then this gets to the heart of the question. If you're illegally carrying in a church and are offered communion, would you be in violation of the law to take communion? If so, sorry guys, my phone just rang. I'm going to turn around and mute that. Sorry, I apologize for that. If so, could you not argue that your First Amendment rights are being violated? Also, the devout would insist they're not consuming alcohol, rather the blood of Christ. A lot of issues, very loaded question. Thank you, Jackson. I think it's a fun question. So let's start with whether or not you can drink alcohol while carrying a firearm. No, you shouldn't do it. You just shouldn't do it. There's no good reason to do it. If you're in a bar, it could be a felony of the third degree, even if you only take a sip of alcohol while you're in a liquor establishment, and that's 5 years in prison. It's just not worth it. It's a minimum of first-degree misdemeanor if you're using weapons while intoxicated. It really gets down to the issue whether or not you're intoxicated. Theoretically speaking, just as I can drive a car, I can have alcohol in my system when I drive that car, as long as I'm not over the limit and under the influence. Same applies to firearms unless I'm in a restaurant or liquor establishment. So it's just never a good idea though. Don't do it. Bad idea. Guns and alcohol just don't mix, in my opinion. So just keep that in mind. So moving on then to the core of the question, the fun part of the question, I think you're on the right track, Jackson. It really comes down, you had mentioned they would argue it's the blood of Christ, it's not in fact alcohol. And that gets actually to a legitimate argument, and that's what we call in the practice law the mens rea, or the criminal intent. And if you truly, honestly believe that it's the blood of Christ and no alcohol, then I think you can make that argument. You know, let's say you actually drink the wine and it does lead to criminal liability in a vacuum. Take the religious component out of it. Let's start there with our hypothetical. Let's bring the religious part of it into it. I think you could argue, look, I didn't have the criminal intent. Because it's the blood of Christ. Now then it gets into the question of theology. If you're Catholic, transubstantiation exists, right? This is actually transubstantiated into the blood of Christ and the body of Christ. They believe that literally in the literal sense. But you go to more of the Lutheran faith, if you will, it's consubstantiation, where it's transformed more symbolically into the blood of Christ. So you get into these issues too theologically, whether or not you actually have the criminal intent or not. So, and then you obviously get into First Amendment issues, freedom of religion, and Second Amendment issues. But generally speaking, I do not believe it's a huge problem. One, you're not at a liquor establishment. They don't have a liquor license. You're not violating any law there. Two, you're not going to be under the influence from a sip, generally, of the wine. And then three, honestly, my opinion, if you want to carry in the church, don't drink the wine. Just take, at least in the Catholic faith, I grew up Catholic, you don't need to take the wine, you can just take the bread and you're fine. I think that's your safest bet. You don't want to get pulled over on the way home from church and they smell alcohol or see wine on your lips and you have a gun on you. You may get out of it, but you might have to pay an attorney like me thousands of dollars to do so. So I think, again, the practical advice is just never drink alcohol with the gun on you. Even in church, at least in the Catholic faith, you can avoid that. it's not much of a problem. And I do know they make exceptions for alcoholics to be able to drink grape juice in the Catholic Church. That might be something you might want to talk to your pastor or priest about. Maybe they can make an exception because you're carrying a firearm. I don't know. But I hope that helped, Jackson. I had a lot of fun with that question. We're actually going to entitle this video, and you've probably already seen it, but Guns and the Pope. So you inspired that. Thank you. So with that said, remember to always be safe out there and carry on.